Witam wszystkich bardzo serdecznie. Dzisiaj kolejne studio festiwalowe. Gościmy dzisiaj Tue Kaae. To jest bardzo znana osoba w świecie malarstwa figurkowego. Myślę, że po tym, co dzisiaj usłyszycie, będziecie mogli wyrobić sobie własną opinię na temat twórczości Tue. Powiem tylko tyle, że Tue będzie sędzią na naszym festiwalu na Kontraście 2020 oraz będzie robił demo na temat tego, jak budować kompozycję i jak budować ją tak, żeby ona zwracała na siebie uwagę.
Okay, so now to translate it in English. So I wanted to welcome you all to our next episode of the contest studio that we are making. And we wanted to welcome Tue to today to talk with, and so hello mate. Tue is a very known modeler and miniature painter, and we are proud to have him here just to talk about his workshop, his presentation, and his approach, and also just to have a cool talk. So welcome, Tue.
Thank you.
So just like maybe from the start, just to ask you, like, what was your beginning? How long have you been involved in this hobby? How did you start miniature painting and just like working with art? What was the start like for you?
So my uncle played role-playing games with my mother's mother and father. So when I was about 6 or 7 or so, I was introduced to this role-playing game thing. And they played all kinds of really boring, like GURPS and Call of Cthulhu, and there was no like dragons and swords and stuff. But crucially, they did have miniatures. So from a very, very early age, I found miniatures and absolutely fell in love with it. So the first miniatures were like Prace and sort of Dragonlance miniatures and stuff like that. And it's stuff that I don't like anymore, but it's what was there back then. So I started at, I don't know, 7 or 8 or so. Bouncing directly from Lego to miniatures. So I've been painting miniatures for a long time.
Yeah, that's really long, honestly. Yep. Like it's interesting that everyone has like a very, let's say, sometimes similar start. Like because I also like started because of RPG games and my brother. But you started way earlier. Like that, it was like very, very early for the years.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
So, like the focus for you, just like it was just like cool miniatures, but like you started painting them back then, or just like playing with them.
I was never really that much of a gamer. I think I've painted 1 or 2 armies back in sort of the late 90s, and went to some. So I've painted some armies, and I have been to different tournaments. But mostly I went to these tournaments in order to show off my painted army. So I wouldn't go to a tournament and compete about winning. I would go to a tournament to compete about the best painted award, because that's what I was passionate about. And I think there's something else and something very valuable to learn when painting armies. So if you look at an army, you have to look at it in the same way as a really, really big diorama. So you need center points, you need attention grabbers, you need areas that are more easy on the eyes. You need all these things in order for an army to work together. Just like anything else. Just like a diorama, just like a bust, just like anything else. You have to look at it like a like a cohesive thing, instead of it looking like just a lot of separate little models.
That's interesting.
So I think you'll learn a lot from painting armies that you can use in competition painting, and you'll learn a lot from competition painting that you can use in painting armies.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're like coming from that like let's say from the other side, because like I also started painting miniatures for like gaming for an army, but on the other hand I haven't tried to like finish an army at all. Yeah, and also you know how long it takes just to finish one. Yeah, like you have to, like, even now, like I'm thinking about it because I'm still like playing, but like you have to actively think about how you want to approach this topic, because it's like a big adventure. Yeah, and just to paint that many miniatures, and like that what you mentioned, you know, that you have to show center points or like key pieces that maybe have to attract more attention, but also we can work on them a little more probably. Yeah, that's cool. Like, did it impact your like the whole way of thinking about like painting miniatures? Like, do you have it till today?
I think everything that you do in your miniature painting career sort of informs and shapes what you do now. At the moment, I'm painting a Warcry warband, and before that, I painted a bunch of necromantic miniatures, just for casual gaming with my friends. And with those, I learn a lot about composition and about quicker techniques, and those are the projects that I test out. I hadn't actually thought about that before. Those are the projects that I test out new products on, whereas my competition stuff is where I test out new ideas.
Okay.
I try to dig in your history to find some interesting facts to use them during our conversation. And I found out that almost from the beginning, you create something different. I mean, you create your own composition. You didn't based on the, let's say, the prepared set of miniatures. Could you tell us why you do it? What was the reason? You was not happy with what you get from the box, or?
I've never been happy with what I got from the box. I've always wanted to change it. I've even before green stuff was available publicly, I would use a female to sculpt little miniatures, and they would always sort of get salt in the oven and just flop and just be a disaster. But it never kept me away from it. I've always been creating. I've always been sculpting stuff out of clay. I've always been drawing. Having said that, I was in miniatures quite a few years before actually starting to do my own miniatures, because I started so early. So I did have a lot of time to be, I don't know, grow discontent with what's in the boxes, so that I would do my own thing. Back then it coincided with I went to Golden Demon. Golden Demon was the only real competition back then, and I went to my first Golden Demon in 2000. So that's more than 20 years ago. No, 99 actually. First one was 99. I won my first one in 2000.
It's probably like a completely different era of Golden Demon, yeah? It's quite wrong. It's a completely different era of Golden Demon, yeah, as it's now.
Oh yes,
yeah? If you look at it, yeah. But that's
way,
cool. Yeah?
This way, Tue has a very good perspective to evaluate some things, some changes or trends.
Golden Demon has changed a lot. When I attended Golden Demon in the start, creativity and sort of willingness to invent your own thing was really something that Golden Demon wanted. They just wanted to show the coolest miniatures at all, And if that involved, I don't know, an Imperial Guardsman riding a snail, and that was cool, yeah, sure, that'll win. So it's moving more and more into a more, I don't dare say, more corporate direction. So it's going from a purely artistic, passionate miniature event to being much more of a marketing event. And I mean, Golden Demon is run by a company. It's their event. They want to use it to show what can be achieved using their techniques as a base. And they're doing a very, very, very good job with that. There was a lot of discussion about the Adepticon Golden Demon. I think anyone who isn't living under a rock would know that there's been a lot of discussion about that. And my takeaway was that what I want now is very different from what Games Workshop want Golden Demon to be. But having said that, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of people who think that what Games Workshop want for Golden Demon is perfect. It's exactly what they want. And they want to push it even more in that direction. And I'm so privileged that there's plenty of other things to go to, plenty of other competitions, exhibitions, plenty of other events to go to that has a more artistic direction and is much closer to what I want. So I wouldn't want to push Golden Demon, not that I can at all, but I wouldn't want to push Golden Demon away from where it's going, because it's got an audience, and those people wouldn't have anywhere else to go to if Golden Demon wasn't there.
Yeah, and I can like relate to this because like probably a lot of people had something like this. And when starting like reading the White Dwarf magazines and like seeing all those works from the competition, and like thinking that maybe one day I will compete and try to win something. It's kind of like a dream, yeah. And for some people, like they want to do it, yeah. And as long as you're logical and want to participate, I think it's a good way to do it, because you know what you're going into, yeah. Like even now, like if you're logical, like if you know that it's a company, they are like more into their own like style of miniatures and such, and you can compete in a competition like this, but you just have to know it, yeah? Know the border that you can't maybe cross, because like it will be problematic. But I wanted to ask you, like, if you like, because you participated in a lot of like events, a lot of competitions, and do you think that like it changes? Like, let's say, like all the events are going into that very artistic direction, or like what decides about the awards? Like is it more the idea, composition, like, or like the story?
So I think that one thing that almost every miniature show does really badly is explain what they are about. So I've been talking to a lot of judges, and I've been talking to a lot of like organizers of events, and nearly all of them have a really good idea about what they want out of the competition. So some want more artistic stuff, some want more technical stuff, some have different categories. So Monte Sansevino, for instance, has the painting, the open, and the ambient. And you use the three categories to indicate what you want your practice to be judged on. So it's more sort of a, I don't know, if you do a pseudo diorama, it could go either into open or into painting or into the other one. But you can decide what you want your piece to be judged on by putting it into one specific category.
Okay.
But almost no miniature shows have a sort of an introduction text telling what what they want the people to know. So Golden Demon, for instance, should definitely have an instruction text about stay to our IP, use the miniatures so that you highlight the miniatures for their merits the best. You can do whatever style, but we value technical perfection and sort of the completeness of the paint job. So in Golden Demon, you need to paint every surface equally well, because when push comes to shove and they need to find out who's placing, they will look at the worst painted surfaces and judge your miniature on that. And that's really, really good to know. It means that you would probably choose to put more work into the shadow areas of miniature, because shadow areas normally don't have a lot of value, they don't have a lot of hue contrast going, and if you want to increase your chances of winning a Golden Demon, you need to put some more effort into that. Yes. So having sort of a primer for every competition would be really, really good, because then you can actually read the primer, and then you can actually know what's going to happen, and you're not going to be surprised about some weird decision that you never saw coming, because you've read the primer, and the primer is there to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea. But like sometimes it's like you can write about a lot of stuff, because like let's say for a normal competition, like that doesn't have that limitation, you want to be pretty open, so like it would be like a very big instruction, honestly, like the levels of what you want to judge. Like even for Kontrast, we read a lot of like the information about the other competitions, just to, like to make a better like rule set and like to change it for that edition that we are making right now.
And I think it's really good.
Yeah, and I think it is better, but that like on the example of Golden Demon, I think it's a very good example right now. And like it would help quite a lot to have that like information. On the other hand, if the competition is not that limited and you judge different things, and in my opinion, that every like part of the miniature should have like a value, because there are so many aspects you can judge the miniature by, and like even on the last edition, like Andrew, had his whole like scene from the Neko Galaxy miniatures, and it was so different. Like if you would look at the rest, so like how can you compare this, let's say, to a perfectly like a one bigger maybe miniature, but that is like finished in every aspect, like in all the shadows, but it's like completely different thing,
it is.
So it is, I think, hard like to make that let's say for the participants, like that, like to see it, like how they can like compete with their own work, in what regards that they will be judged. But like I think that you like mentioned a very, very important thing, that it should be written every time,
So imagine if we compare it to traveling. So if I'm going to Greece, the travel brochure would tell me that there's some beautiful beaches, there's some islands, there's some ruins, there's bound to be a really good national museum, and the culinary experience is really good. It's a island nation, so it's famous for its fish and shellfood. It wouldn't say in the travel flyer that there will be toilets. You can expect that to be a bed. There's a lot of basic things when going on travel that you just expect to be there. And you could do the same with the painting competition. Everyone knows that painting skills and good composition and knowledge of color theory is a plus to any competition that you go to. So you don't need to write that. But writing that you're judging miniatures on their merits instead of their flaws. You're judging idea and composition over technical perfection. You can do a relatively short, succinct text, maybe like, I don't know, 80 words or 50 words or something like that. Just a really, really short primer to tell people what they can expect, what direction that you're going to be judging in.
Yeah. That's something that we wanted to do, honestly, yeah? And I think it is very important, yeah. And even like a small information, like that, sometimes it's like few words that are needed, yeah, because you also don't want to write like a big piece of text that like people just won't read, yeah, in the end, because it looks like this, right now.
You want just use short.
That's very important. Okay, so maybe Michał.
So, for instance, if you talk to Ferrari about the competition in Monte Savino, the different categories, he will have a very, very good idea about what you should put into each one, how standard is judged versus how master is judged. He'll have a whole idea, like a philosophy, really, about how his competition and how judging will go. But he hasn't written it down. It's something that's public knowledge if you can get it from him, but he needs to write it down so that everyone can get it and everyone can go to a competition and have an idea about what to expect. Yes.
Okay, Tue, next question is let's come back to your art. I mean, you will be doing the presentation during Kontrast related to the composition. So I don't want you to tell right now everything, but could you tell our viewers what is, let's say, the golden recipe by you in terms of the composition?
In terms of composition, I think idea is maybe a better word. So composition is only one part of what miniature art is. Composition is mostly about mostly it's understood to be color composition, but I think color placement is at least as important. I think line of action and focus building is at least as important. Using value and hue in the right places, using detailing to draw attention and to pull attention away. There's so many different things working together that creates a really good entry. And that's what my presentation is about. I plan to not really use miniatures, but use cardboard and markers and color pencil and stuff like that in order to better basically I want to explain sort of the base principles behind it, but if I put in miniatures, people will be too focused on the miniatures instead of focusing on the base principles. So it's going to be like if you're modeling a forest and you want one tree to stand out specifically, you obviously need more trees, otherwise it'll just be a tree. If you want a forest, you need multiple trees. But if you want one to be standing out more than the other one, you could paint it red, or you could paint it lime green, or you could choose to put focus on that one tree specifically. But you need to do so. You need to be knowledgeable about the need of putting attention to that one tree. And you need to put, if you want the tree to be the focal point, it can be the red tree. And if you want the tree to be sort of the balancing thing between it and the druid, or I'm just inventing stuff here, then you should probably go for lime green instead, so that it's still coherent with the forest. Without drawing too much attention. So you have all these sort of different keys to play on, and the more you know about the different keys and how to play them well, the better you are at doing miniatures. And me, technical perfection is just one of the keys. And I don't even think that it's the most important one. It's important to have it somewhere, but to me, idea and color placement and dynamics is more important for the piece to be good.
Yeah. Okay. In my opinion, like when you talk about it, I have some questions about it, yeah, because like that's something like I think every miniature painter, and also like just like when we do it, like to add a lot to the scene or like even to a miniature, yeah, because like even without having like the surroundings or just having a bust, you can add all the things that you mentioned, yeah, because it's just like layers of many different contrasts and stuff. And even like when you mentioned that, let's say, technical perfection, it's also like a way of contrasting something, because you can like paint something perfectly, for example, a face, and the rest do it sketchy, and the face will attract the attention. Yeah, that's like important, and I think we can learn it from like traditional painters, because most of the time, like for portraiture, the face was perfect, the rest was like a little sketchy, yeah, but it focused the attention so much, yeah. And my question is that like. Have you based it on something? Like, is it learned for you? Is it like more intuitive, or you just like experimented a lot, or you just like developed it like reading or like seeing different examples or searching something that you like?
So the bit about using sketchiness and using sharpness of focus is definitely classical art. Not only does it draw more attention towards the face if you do the face really well and the rest of it more sketchy, the sketchiness makes the smoothness and the crispness of the face more smooth.
Yeah,
it's
you see the contrast.
I've been using it for a long time with bases. So if you have a really smooth paint job, you want a really messy and really sort of granular and natural looking base, because those two will contrast and make each of them more of its own thing.
Yeah, that is very good recipe. But let's go forward. Don't give all the secrets right now, because we need to keep them on our presentation during Kontrast 2022. Tue, next question. Which of your works you think is the best? Because I try to find something in the internet. I find some pictures. Now we see some of your miniatures. This is completely different. I'm from the miniatures to the dioramas and to some fantastic concept. How do you see this from the perspective of the years, and what do you think? Do you create this one already, or this is still in the future?
So all my entries is about playing with something in particular. The frog, for instance, the one that was on the left in the picture, I wanted to push in a different sort of artistic direction and introduce some fairy tale elements, but also introduce some sort of body horror, and it's sort of a contrast between the cute and the creepy. So you ask which one I like the most, and I would say that I'm the most proud about my space camel. It wasn't on the picture there, but it was on the header before the starter. Yeah. It's something that I sculpted myself. I built all of it and I painted all of it. So there's a lot of work that has gone into it, and I tried to do something exactly what we talked about earlier. about pushing focus with detail, but I wanted to push focus with detail in the sculpting and the building stage as well. So there's a lot of parts of that miniature that are very, very rough, and you don't see them because all the other bits are so sharp and so crisp. Every now and then I get the pleasure of showing the miniatures to someone who knows about figure painting and who looks at the miniature and then didn't actually see all the rough parts, but only see them when I point them out.
Yeah.
And being able to fool people who knows what they're looking at is such a pleasure.
Yeah, but you're also showing like the painted figure, yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do with the painting also. Like it's cool that you have that you have the possibility of that like full creative process, yeah. But because most of the time you're just like painting those sculptures, yeah, and let's say doing maybe not half of the job, but like let's say lightly you can describe it like this, yeah. But still, like it's cool because we talked about this project, yeah, and on the last edition of Kontrast, and yeah, that roughness you could see it sometimes, like in some parts, but you have to look for it, yeah. It's not something that you see like from right from the start, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very cool.
Okay, let's come back a little bit to the competitions, because I want to use your experience and ask you a question about this. How do you see from the perspective of the years how the competition change? What is right now? What is the most important focus point in the competition right now? It's artistic, or no, or the way of painting. How you see this? How it's changed during the years?
So I think the most important change has been the multiplication of competitions. So when I started my competition career, or whatever you want to call it, and a few years after that, there was like 8 or 10 different competitions in the world, all around the world, and they were all different versions of the Golden Demon event. So back then you had very different, sort of many options of going to different countries, but the events would be the same all the way around. And by now you have a whole slew of different events that combine many different cultural and many sort of. So Kontrast, for instance, has a theater, and last time when I was there was a band playing, and I love that. I love to introduce some other culture into this competition stuff. And I think the diversity of the events that you can go to is very, very important. So you can go to these, like the upcoming British Golden Demon will be some of the best painted miniatures in the world from a technical perspective. And yeah. I find them relatively boring, but they are masterfully done. And you can sort of pick and choose what you want to do yourself. I'm going to a lot of events this year, so I'm picking more than I should, I guess, because I will be going to some events that I'm not planning to take part in, or maybe I'm just there for the event. So basically, if you do a miniature, now you have the freedom to do the miniature that you want to do, and then you can take it to the show that fits with your idea about what you want to get judged on. And that's a huge privilege that we have now, that we haven't had at any other point previously. I think there's some pretty big changes coming as well, because over the past 2 years, much of the miniature painting hobby has moved online. Twitch and Instagram is much, much more of an influence and a much bigger thing now than it was before. So before, shows was really important if you wanted to build a name and if you wanted to show people what you do. If you wanted to push some new idea or some new direction, you would go to shows. And by now it's sort of changing, so that shows is more something that you go to in order to hang out with people and see other people and discuss ideas. Whereas the best way to communicate what you do in miniature painting is online. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't like it at all.
We do.
But I can tell you one thing, that like the meeting of people, like it's very important after those 2-3 years of like just like hanging out at home and just like being quarantined or something. Yeah. But I think you're right. Like I have the same idea of how it looks right now, because I think it's not mandatory for you to go to a competition to be successful as a miniature painter right now.
Yes.
You can present your work on so many places, on so many occasions, that online, just to have like a big audience of people. And it's not internet galleries like Patty and Paint. Those are completely different things right now. And I also don't like it, honestly. I think you should see the work personally. Like it's such a big difference, like from what you see on the picture, and also like seeing how it works in a three-dimensional environment, and even talk with the artist, because like it can be curious, So that's very important. But do you think that this will help for the hobby to develop even more, like that change that we had right now?
If it's good for the hobby as a whole, yes, I definitely think so. It's much more. It's much easier to fall in love with it. It's much easier to get access to the really exciting stuff. It's just much more available. I've been relatively active on Twitch, for instance. I haven't been streaming myself, but I've been stalking all other kinds of streamers, and I've been chatting a lot to a lot of people, and so I've been talking to people who started painting when the Corona pandemic hit, and now they are professional painters. They make a living painting miniatures and teaching other people how to paint miniatures. They've been able to do that in 2 years. And they've been able to do that because the hobby is so online by now. And I think that's fucking amazing. It's not even a necessity to do box arts anymore. You can just do videos. You can just do streaming. There's a whole new venue of what you can do professionally as a miniature artist, and you can spice it up. You can, Eric Swinson is streaming and painting box arts. Most of the time, he's not doing the two things at the same time because NDAs and stuff like that. But he's doing multiple things. But I think it's necessary to move that direction as well. I had an idea before I went really deep into Twitch and into Instagram and into sort of the social media side of it. I had this idea about my reach and who I'm influencing and who knows my work. And I've been shown time and time again that people have no idea who I am. I'm talking to people that I would think had seen my work, and then I'm showing my work and they're like, wow, I've never seen that before. So I've come to realize that I just don't have the reach that I thought. It used to be the idea that if you just did a really cool miniature and you took it to some shows, then pictures of it would filter out and people would know the piece. And by now everything is moving so fast that that's just not the case anymore. If you want to be able to show your work or influence people with your work, you need to be in the social media bubble as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's mandatory right now. But on the other hand, if you look at it, let's say back in the day, the social media wasn't so developed. Yeah, so this site. Yeah, maybe you could have like internet forums, like galleries, like Cool Me or Not or something. Yeah, and like it was very important to go to competitions to show off your work. But if you look at the whole scale of the whole hobby, like it was way smaller than it is right now. Yeah, and my only biggest like concern and gripe about this is that there's so much material on the YouTube, on Twitch, that I think people can easily find it. Yeah, but sometimes, let's say from my perspective, and my perspective is very skewed if I look at it, yeah. But from my perspective, there's a lot of misinformation and like showing people a lot of tricks, a lot of fast stuff. That okay, like for gaming and like for having fast effects, it's okay. But just like for deeper understanding and just like being in general a better artist, yeah, it's not good, yeah. And you can learn stuff that probably would be harder just to like. Unlearn or like relearn, yeah. So like there's a downside to it, yeah, and that's I think my biggest concern about it right now, yeah. And honestly, from my experience, like I have a Patreon, yeah, but like from my experience, it's like it, you know, that I don't also like, as you mentioned, like some people that maybe know, like maybe advanced miniature painters know, let's say my work, yeah, and I think like it's very relevant for other like painters, like they have the same situation. But as long as you aren't on social media, like very strong, then probably most of the people don't know about you, yeah, and most of the artists are just focused on their work and not promoting themselves, yeah. So that's like you know, like the other side of this coin, yeah. But honestly, I think like it changes, and like it's good also that you mentioned those things, because like it's going so fast right now, like it's staggering, yeah.
But because it's going so fast, I think that the festivals or the events are very important, because you have time to see the miniature in life, in real life. You know, you can judge by your own eye, because the camera is always cut off of a lot of things in the miniature. And then if you have a contact with this kind of art in real life, it's completely different, and it's much more inspiring. I mean, I was one time on the SMC and I saw so many very nice miniatures. Because on the Facebook or on the Twitch or on the other Instagram, the feed is changing very fast. You see just using the finger and it's gone. But if you are going to the festival, you see the piece of art and the artist. You can talk to him, ask him. So this is completely different way of communication and experiencing the art of miniature painting.
So I think you're touching on something very important, and I think it's something that most shows should be putting a lot of effort into. Most shows should put more effort into it than what they are now. So myself and Andrew and Torbjørn, two of the other Chrome Lord guys, Andrew went to Kontrast as well. We're starting a podcast as well. On a side note, that's one of the things that has come over the past 2 years. Interviews and podcast has really blossomed over the past 2 years. Anyway, we're starting a podcast as well. And the first topic will be why you should go to shows. Because right now you can see all the miniatures on your smartphone from your couch. So why bother going to shows? What's the point?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, you might be able to talk to someone, but I don't think that person will have time to talk to someone as lowly as me. Then I should spend all the time, spend all the time and all the money going to a different nation to go to a show to see some miniatures. What would be the point? That's exactly the point. You should definitely go. I think going to shows specifically my first time going to Monte San Savino has probably been the most changing factor in the way that I do miniatures now. Just being exposed to miniatures, just being exposed to the people, and every single painter will have time to talk to you. Some of them will be busy talking to everyone, and may not have time to talk to you for a long time, but I guarantee you that people are very, very passionate. I was trying to convince one of the streamers yesterday about going to a small British show, and the person was like, but it's sort of awkward talking to strangers and stuff like that. No, it isn't. It isn't. We're not strangers here. We're all sharing this passion, and while we might have different ideals and different political opinions and all kinds of differences, what really pulls us together, what the miniature family is all about, is what we share. And everyone is fucking eager to talk about that, because we all go to these shows, and we all go to these shows because of that. So I think shows are probably more important than ever before.
Yep.
I think after the Adepticon Golden Demon, the internet blew up about Slayer Sword winners and all that kind of stuff. And that's because we've had 2 years of not really meeting. So we've had 2 years of creating our own little echo chambers and getting our own sort of idea about what we want out of miniatures. There's so many miniatures and so many miniature painters now that you can curate your feed on Facebook or Instagram or whatever to just cater what you want to see. So I could see just Games Workshop style stuff and never have to see any of the Spanish stuff because I could just filter that one out.
Yep.
So the Adepticon Golden Demon was the first time that those people from those echo chambers, from those sort of tribal environments, met for the first time in 2 years. And for some of them, they've never been to shows and they don't know what it's about. So that's why the discussion was so heated and so aggressive, is that it's all about coming together for these shows. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I'm judging only by the interest of the Kontrast. Fortunately, we have a lot of interest, and a lot of people plan to come to the Kontrast. Tue, let's talk about Dogma 48, because this is a very interesting project. I mean, we spent some time with Krzysiek discussing this and trying to dig in this subject, but maybe you could tell our viewers briefly what is Dogma 48.
So Dogma 48 is it teaches you how to do a competition entry in 48 hours. So if you want to sleep, you have less time to paint. If you want to build, you have less time to paint. If you also want to eat, you're going to be pressed on time. So it was inspired by the period just before a show. So every painter that I know always paints up until the deadline. But missing that deadline has a really heavy consequence. It basically means that you don't get to take your miniature to the event. And that's not a very nice feeling. But you learn a lot of stuff in that really pressed amount of time. You have to take a lot of choices that are very forced. Most of the time they're good choices. Most of the time you are engaging more with your friends online or in real life about what to do with this project. That last week of a project is very different than the month that went before that. So this event is about sort of simulating that feel. So you go to this event and you need to cut away everything that isn't critically needed to feed your idea. So if you want to do a miniature with a mechanical arm, you could spend 12 hours sculpting a mechanical arm, but you could also do the normal arm and put some tubes on it and paint it silver, and it'll still communicate as a mechanical arm. And it's just not worth those 12 hours to do the sculpting instead of just gluing some bits on it. And sometimes it's a good idea to do the long thing, but most of the time it's not really needed. And that means that you have more time for more projects. You can do more miniatures if you do them more efficiently. So this event is about killing off the ideas that only have merit in your mind, but not actual merit. So if you have this idea about doing something that you're really passionate about, but it's way too much time, it is not very effective, you need to cut away that idea, otherwise you won't have time that weekend. It's about teaching you how important it is to ask your friends for support and feedback, because you can't just set the model aside and wait for a day or two until you decided what to do. You need to work on it now, because if you put it aside for a day or two, the event is over. So you need to go to your friends and ask their opinion and trust what they say in order to move on with that project of yours. It's so fast-paced, and the stuff that comes out of this event is quite mind-blowing. So there's quite a few people who go there who don't normally do display painting. They don't normally do miniature art. But they do that at this event because it's so much fun. And because what you achieve in this event is very different than what you achieve outside of the event. So you learn a whole lot. The event is sort of focused around failing fast instead of failing slow.
Okay, and how you organize this? I mean, this is online or in real life? I mean, some people are coming to one place and spend these 40 hours, without food and water.
It's very critical that it is a physical event. We've been running it for quite a few years now. I think we've run it like 14 or 15 times or something like that. We've run it a lot of times. And every time we invited a bunch of people, or rather we put up available seats and people invite themselves to the event. And then we go to, at the moment, it's our local workshop in Copenhagen. So everyone goes there. We're normally between 10 and 16 people or so. So we pack all these people into the basement, and then you don't really leave the basement until the weekend is over. And we've been implementing some online stuff over the past couple of events, and it's been somewhat successful. You can do it remotely, but it's nothing like being there.
Yeah.
It ties in really well with the whole talk about going to shows. Is that you have to be there. There's something else, something different, something better happening when you're there in person.
Do you think that we can try to organize something like this here in Poland with you?
Oh, I think it would be amazing. I think with the painting jam thing, with the painting jam thing, you're probably at least halfway there. It seems to be very much the same sort of atmosphere and idea. It's pushing towards a shared deadline. It's not a shared project as such. It can be sometimes. We've had cases before with the Dogma 48 where someone would take over a little part of your project if time is really sliding and that other person have time. We've had 1 year we had a table that all did jungle stuff. So we had like community jungle, different jars of jungle fluff and sponges and stuff like that. So all of the projects ended up using the same sort of materials because it was just more efficient and better if everyone just supplied what they had to it.
Okay, so we will talk about this during Kontrast. I need to start to find some nice basement for this project.
No, it shouldn't be a basement. Like I have some ideas right now. That will be terrifying. But honestly, like I always like, because like you were talking about the meeting at competitions and stuff. I think it ties into this also, because it's a meeting of people that work on a maybe different projects, but at the same time, and also exchange the ideas. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing that you do it, yeah, because you're breaking a lot of rules maybe for the people that participate. Probably I couldn't finish a miniature in 48 hours, or at least I would sketch everything and then like probably have that like drive to just finish it like later. But honestly, I think like it's a good way of just like introducing people to like thinking about the bigger picture. You don't focus on the detail, as you mentioned. Yeah, like that's like a very valuable lesson, like to be learned. And because people like work on small details and then maybe try to add it up, and most of the time it doesn't work. But in the end, like it's the general like picture that counts. And like I think for Kontrast, Michał, like we have to talk about it, because like I think like you could do it like a meeting like this before the competition, yeah, like 2 days before, and just like to allow the people to meet and then make those entries and then compete in the competition, like maybe on a category like this, like the dogma projects and something like this, yeah, because like it could be so awesome to just to like meet earlier and just paint together.
Yeah,
like
let's do it.
I was on several like competitions, like in Poland, but also on Scale Model Challenge, and I also always felt like outside of the workshops, like we meet and talk, but you know, it's like talking about different stuff, and but not painting. I know that a lot of painters, like let's say that do it like professionally or like just like paint very good, spend a lot of time on it, and on a competition. Not always don't want to like paint more, because they are tired because of the deadlines. But I always miss that part that like we could also sit together and paint, because like it is so valuable. Because like you can talk with those people that you normally can't meet, and because they live so far away. Because like we meet like let's say for all the people from Europe and stuff, and just like do something together. And just talk about it, exchange ideas, because like let's say if I would sit with like Michał Pisarski or like with you, each one of you has a completely different approach, and also I have a different approach, and like exchanging those ideas, brainstorming, that could be epic, and I always miss that part on big competitions, because you just can't do it, and people don't want to do it.
But like during this Kontrast, we plan to create kind of painting zone when you can sit down together and paint the miniature. Maybe not. This will be not, I know, on a very sophisticated miniature, but I think that spending time together and talking is more important than the miniature.
Oh yes, oh yes, definitely. And normally going to shows. Normally going to shows, you sort of, it's almost like a nerd speed dating. So you have like a 5 or 10 minute conversations with a lot of people. And going to a longer hobby event like Dogma 48, you spend a lot of time next to a person. And you have some really quality, deep conversations with that person. Instead of the constantly fast moving thing.
That's something you most of the time miss on competitions, and it's not about a bad thing, because like you can talk about different stuff, but like from my experience, like there's not too many painters, like let's say I could count them on one hand, that I've had like a deeper interaction and talking about all that stuff, that you normally do, and because like normally goes into that, not too many people go into that detail, and it's not because they don't want to share, but it's just the situation that doesn't allow it that much, and I always felt that like you can go to a competition, of course you can look at the miniatures, but most of the time they are on a shelf and you can't touch them, like the judges have a good situation, because they can look at each piece, have it in hand, and just like talk about it, have time, maybe they should do it faster, like from my experience, but you know how it is. But on the other hand, like it was cool, because like your works I saw, I think, on the last Scale Model Challenge that was like before COVID, And I always had that idea, and I even talked with friends that after the competition, when everything is like ending and everyone is taking their pieces from the shelf, like from the competition, like we meet in one place and just like take out the pieces and just talk about them. Yeah, just like see them in person. You can touch it, like, because the artist is there, and you can like ask him, okay, like we haven't talked there like back then, because like maybe we didn't knew each other that much, but I've seen your works, and it was like awesome, because like normally on the shelf you can't see those details, and I think that's the biggest value that we have from competitions, just meeting the artists and talking about it. Yeah, just like asking questions, and it should be promoted much more with each event, because I think a lot of competitions miss that part. Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of people who go to competitions miss that part, because it's only for a select number. That specific event you're talking about, that SMC, I was teaching 2 classes, and I was really pressured for time with that. So that last 1 hour of just meeting the painters and seeing the pieces up close, that really made the event for me. It was clearly the best hour of that event, and it's very often like that. The packing up and the sort of pressures going away phase is just so very enjoyable.
Tue, I want to come back to your art.
Yes.
And ask you a tough question. We talked a week ago just to prepare this interview, and you told me that you don't prepare the minis for the bigger audience. I mean, for the selling, for example. You're just sculpting for yourself. But do you think that this is a little bit unfair, because some of your miniatures are very nice and many people probably want to paint them? For example, this frog one, which we show a few minutes ago. What is your approach to this? Do you think that you can someday release some of your miniatures for the fans?
I have something in the works. I've got 8 or 9 finished sculpts already waiting for release, and they will be released at one point. I will still be doing stuff just for me. Sometimes I'm planning my new piece for World Expo and for Monty, and that one will be a sculpt, and it'll just be that one, and it'll just be for me. But I also want to, just like I want to bring my ideas to someone else and see their spin on my ideas, I want to bring my miniatures to someone else and see their idea about that. So I am planning to release a lot of stuff.
Okay, but this will be released in the cooperation with some companies, or just your company?
I'm not good with tech, and I'm not good with logistics. So it's way better for me to just find someone who's willing to release it all.
So when we will see them on the market? I mean, when they will be available?
I don't know yet. I honestly don't know yet. We were talking. I'm talking to someone about it, and we're talking about. I think we've been talking about it for like 1.5 years or so, but COVID just fucks up everything about release schedules, and sort of everyone has sort of. It used to be so that all the companies would time their releases with the big shows, and for the past 2 years that just hasn't been a possibility because there's been no big shows.
Yep.
So everyone is still sort of trying to find their way in this, and everything is relatively chaotic with that still. All the pieces need just a tiny touch-up. I sculpted them about a year ago, and there's some things I want to tweak here and there. I want to do a better face here, a better pose here. I just want to change all of them a little bit. But they're pretty much ready to be released.
Okay.
But that's cool to hear.
Yeah, logistics is not my strong side. And that goes for talking to people about release as well. And
Well,
I am at heart I'm a creative, and trying to push creatives to hold up to deadlines is not an easy task.
no. I know this from autopsy. I also like have problems with deadlines, but
Yep.
honestly, I think like if you can find a good company just to
Yep.
release them,
Yep.
it would be very cool to see your projects like just like maybe shown to a like bigger audience, yeah, or like because like you know, like from those that I've seen, yeah, I know that those will be very cool and original, because like the biggest problem with miniatures right now is like that originality factor, yeah, because there's a lot of like, let's say, archetypes that are like reused and you know, like doing your own miniatures, you can go wild, yeah. You are like scared of like doing something that maybe won't sell, yeah, and like that's more in line with just art, yeah. You're just doing one, like a miniature one-off for yourself,
Yeah.
and even doing products like this from your side, yeah, and not being scared, because I think you're not. Then that's very important. So like I hope like you will be able to release some, as it's very cool.
I will.
Yeah?
I will.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, like you will be the judge at the Kontrast show, yeah? I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about judging? What's like important for you, like in just like judging miniatures? Yeah, I know that it's very like specific for each person, like because like we always have like a jury of people that and also like with different approaches, but that's very important. But I wanted to hear your version. So, what do you think about it? About judging?
I think judging is a very complex thing. I think one of the reasons why every show should have that pitch about what that show is about, that I talked about earlier, is to inform the judges about what the show want to judge for. So being a judge at Golden Demon is completely different than being a judge at Kontrast or at Monty or anywhere else. So every show has something that they want to push, and as a judge, you need to be first and foremost an official of the show, and be as impartial and impersonal as you can. You need to look at the miniatures and judge them. In a perfect world, you would look at each miniature and you would look for what that miniature is trying to achieve, and then judge it on the success of that achievement. So if you're looking at a miniature that's really technically well painted, you should be judging it based on that. Whereas some other miniature, it would be idea or color composition or basically I think that miniatures should be judged on their merits instead of on their flaws. They should be judged on the passion and the idea and the love that has been put into that project, instead of looking for where you failed along that way. But judging is really complex. I was talking to Banshee about judging. I went to Moson and judged the fantasy section there, and someone had painted a miniature alongside a tutorial. So he had just copied whatever happened in the tutorial. So that person has painted that miniature himself, but all of the creative choices has already been made by someone else.
Yeah.
So can he be credited with those creative choices? No. Most likely that wouldn't be fair. But if I haven't seen the video, if I don't know about that video, then I would credit him with those creative choices. So my knowledge as a judge directly impacts the chance of that specific miniature. And that's not fair either. So personally, I just judge whatever I see. If you don't get credit for any of the creativity, you wouldn't be able to do any of the, I don't know, Games Workshop is a a solid example here because Games Richard tells you how to paint all of the miniatures. Fan art would be another good candidate. You wouldn't be able to paint a Superman miniature and be credited for creative choice because someone else already took those creative decisions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So judge whatever you see. Judge on the ideas, judge on the execution of it, but try to judge it on the miniatures premises instead of your own opinions.
Yeah.
But that's difficult. It's very difficult to put yourself aside.
Okay, Tue, last question. Oh,
yes.
Krzysiek?
No, proceed.
Okay, last question to Tue. How could you encourage people to come to Kontrast? What can you say?
How to encourage people to come to Kontrast? So, I don't know if I maybe mentioned that I'm doing a podcast with some friends of mine, and we'll be talking about going to shows and the importance of going to shows. Kontrast is one of the shows that I would push for people to go to because it's a really, really good show. One of the things that Kontrast can do that maybe World Model Expo is not as good at is that it's a smaller show. So you'll have more time with the people that you go to that show with. I went to Painterpalooza in Berlin. Ben and Matt set it up some years ago before COVID and all that.
Yep.
And I think we might have been 25 people there or something like that. Just 25 people in Berlin. And the intention was for the show to be bigger, but it turned out to be a really, really good show because like half of the people were volunteering and putting up desks and stuff like that. And everyone was just one big happy family. And it meant that you get to talk a lot closer to a smaller number of people. So smaller shows do have a merit. I think Kontrast is mostly a show for the Polish community, but I've been once, and I'm planning to go as many times a year as I can, because I love it. I think it's a really good show.
Okay, and for us, this is probably the very good news. Tue, Krzysiek, thank you for your time and very nice talk tonight. We will come back next week with some more interviews with the people who will be on the Kontrast. So stay with us. And thank you guys, and see you next time on Kontrast.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It was really good talk. See ya.
See ya.
See you. Bye.